And if you have an itch in your back from climbing a dying vine, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Geoff, and Aletheian is the subject of this episode.
Aletheian? I thought we were talking about Crutch.
Yeah.
Well, you can't talk about Aletheian without talking about Crutch.
Isn't that saying like tomato?
Yeah, except it'd be like saying tomato and
tomato sauce.
You know.
Yeah, let's find out what the
slightly different. It's a little easier for me to say Crutch, which is why I pretty much always just say Crutch versus Aletheian. But Aletheian is the name of the band, so there you go. Interesting tidbit about Crutch is the first time I ever heard Crutch, I thought, they sound kind of like Death and X-Toll. So I used to call them Death Toll.
Nice.
Which sounds more like a tough guy hardcore band, but whatever.
So how did Crutch become Aletheian, or how did Crutch become Crutch then?
Well, Crutch was a band that started off, I guess, around like 97, 98, somewhere around there. Sometime in that realm. And they were kind of this like death metal band that played like really proggy music, basically sounding kind of like Death. Like I said, Death was the biggest one I heard. There's a little bit of Cynic in there, especially on the first album. So the band described themselves on a flyer I got from them at Cornerstone one year, where they called themselves like a melodic, progressive, technical death metal, which is a lot of syllables. This band loves syllables.
Is this the part of the conversation where I bring out the button that says up own ass?
They may have been a little bit, but I think that comes with the territory, right?
Well, that's that whole, we are progressive metal, but we're not progressive metal like Pink Floyd. We're progressive like we're really complicated and intricate and polyrhythmic, and we're not Tool, don't worry.
Right, well, and I don't think that they, when you've got to throw the word death metal on at the end of that, because you don't want Dream Theater fans tuning in and being like, oh, okay, I was expecting, balls in a vice grip singing, although we do get a little bit of that later on, don't we?
Well, before we get into balls in a vice grip singing, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, so if you have an Amazon Echo or Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening. And now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
5-star reviews are the lifeblood of podcasts. If you want to get recognized as a podcast or be advertised on iTunes front page or something like that, 5-star reviews are what you need to get there. So that's kind of what we need to get there. We really appreciate all of your guys' reviews that you've given us so far. If you don't think that we deserve a 5-star review, you can definitely give us whatever kind of review you think we deserve. You can also leave us a review on Facebook now. If you go to facebook.com/discography discussion, you can now leave reviews, starred reviews, and written reviews on our Facebook page directly, and I will read those as they are received on the show.
I want to give a big shout out to our new Twitter followers, and now Geoff is going to do a shout out to Patreon.
Oh, you want me to say hi, Dave? Dave, you're my hero. You're my fan. I'm your biggest fan. You're my fan, too. It all works out. It's like a perfect circle. Oh, no, wait, the wrong episode for that.
We're talking about that next month, right?
I don't think that's going to be an episode that we do. Over my dead body.
So, what have you been listening to this week, Geoff, on your downtime?
Oh, on my downtime? Oh, God. Dan, did you listen to what I sent you?
I usually, when you send me a recommendation, I just hit delete, but...
the Ethel Duath?
Oh, no, I haven't gotten around to that yet, man. I've had some shit going on.
Really? We didn't know. So now that I'm done kissing Dan's ass, hopefully he'll go listen to it. But that's actually... So that's what I've been listening to, man. It's some of the craziest shit. I guess that's pretty crazy coming from me. It's metal, but it's like jazz-infused metal.
Oh, so it's Between the Buried and Me.
Done before.
Yeah, there's like... This is an old album. And there's like trumpets and all kinds of weird shit on it.
Done before.
Yeah, I know, but they do a fantastic job. Come on,
I'll
guys.
listen to it as long as we can move on.
Dan, tell me about Crutch.
Well, Crutch is a band that I started listening to probably around, like 02, 03, something like that. A little bit after they were kind of already an established thing. There was a buddy of mine that I used to talk to on AOL Instant Messenger named Matt, and he was a really big fan of these guys. He was from their local area, which they're originally from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and so he was a huge fan, like a super fan. And I remember, because I used to be kind of more on the hardcore side of things, so I would show him hardcore bands like Norma Jean and stuff like that. And he got into that. Then he would turn around and he would show me like death metal bands. And so one of the first bands that he told me about, he's like, dude, you got to check out this band called Crutch. They're like death. They're like cynic. They're like Extol. And, at the time I didn't really know what a lot of those terms meant because I didn't bloom in metal for a little while, And so basically when I heard it, my mind was kind of blown because like I'd heard death metal before that, at least a little bit, but it was like really different in the sense that it was very melodic in places, and the music sounded to my ears like impossible to play. Like the drums were just insane, like for that time, and it wasn't just like straight like blast beat, like straight double bass, straight blast beat. There's plenty of that, but there was a lot of groove, and the guitar was just mind blowing, just alternating leads, crazy solos, really cool sounding melodic stuff, but not like I'm gonna bust an acoustic guitar out, kids, and play it for you. Like it was just like serious. It never, at least especially on the first album, never really slowed the momentum of the music. And so I became a really big fan of that band, even though I did obtain their first album through less than admirable means.
So why did they become Aletheian then?
Well, I don't know the exact reason for that. We'd have to ask Travis on that. I don't remember the exact reason. I think he said something about copyright, but I could be wrong about that.
He actually went into a little bit of detail if we go back to the Death episode that he was on with us.
Let's listen to that again.
Yeah, I think he actually did. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I'm pretty sure that we approached that subject with him, and he actually gave us an answer.
That's a shout out to the previously published Death episode with Travis Turner. Go check that out.
Really cool.
Have a link to that in the show notes.
In case you didn't know, Travis Turner was the drummer for Crutch during this album and the next. Really good friend of the show. Hello, Travis. I know you're listening, buddy. In addition to Travis, we had other members of the band. We had lead singer was Joel Thorpe, guitar player Alex Kennis, and second guitar player Donnie Swigert. I guess that's the way you pronounce his name. Anyway.
We're going to get to this a little bit later when we start talking about their live shows, but Alex was kind of he was the driving force behind this band's sound. He did the recording, the engineering, the mixing. He builds his own electronics. He builds his own amps. He builds amps specifically for recording. And he plays the bass, the keys, and everything additional on these records. He plays his guitar. You got Travis playing drums. Everybody does their role, but then he does everything else.
Yeah, he was, as far as I knew, he was pretty much like one of the driving forces.
And it shows. When you listen to these records, they sound like they were mixed by a guitar player. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the guitar really shines, and it's really cool because these were obviously not recorded in like $1 million studio or anything, so it's basically like self-recording, but actually sounds good enough to at a time when that was not prevalent.
No, not in the late 90s. I mean, like 99, 2000. what you had back then is you had like really bad real recordings, or you had really shitty digital, and neither were really preferable. You just kind of had to know what you were doing when you were recording stuff.
Yeah, I remember my old DATs. Those were fun.
I still got that reel-to-reel in the closet, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's the only way to fly, man. No, I will say this about Alex. Love the vibrato, man. I love his vibrato.
He rides the right hand.
Dude, it's unbelievable. I mean, I know it's like underlying on pretty much everything, but man,
yeah, it's definitely down in the mix.
Yeah, it's way down in the mix, but every time I hear it, I just kind of smile. I'm like, dude, I was like, that needs to be cranked up a little bit. I was like, I'm thinking like straight up prog and power metal vocalists like hiding.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do my best for this episode not to criticize the mix, because a lot of the complaints that I have are with the way these were mixed.
Okay.
And I have to give a disclaimer on that. Alex did the mixing. He did the mastering. He's an audio junkie. He is a gearhead's gearhead. He's one of those guys. He might even be in the same realm as Les Paul as far as his mental capacity or the way he's approaching these from a technical perspective. And that's cool.
You need a moment alone with Alex, Joe?
I do, actually.
Okay.
I'd love to hang out with him in his vocal booth. It's in a closet. I'm inspired. Anyway.
Okay. Wow.
I wonder when I listen to these, and this is something that Dan told me a long time ago about Aletheian performing live without a bass player. And the reason was, we don't need a bass player. I will always argue till the end of time, yes, you do. It's not just the notes that they play, it's the frequency that they occupy. And these records, all three, although they are not the same, you can tell a guitarist had his hands on the board. Guitars are prevalent in the mids where they belong. Again, technically, that is where they belong. The drums, especially on Hope Prevails, and for the audience that doesn't know, we will use Crutch and Aletheian interchangeably throughout this episode because to us it's the same band. The vocals, although they are harsh, are right up front. I don't hear the bass. I don't hear the backup singing. It's there, and Geoff pointed it out already. I want to hear more of it. I want to hear that bass, too, because there's a lot of really good bass work on these records, especially on Hope Prevails. There is a fretless at one point, really early on. You play a fretless and bust out a beautiful Between the Buried and Me style Viridian solo, and you don't want to turn it up? I'm confused.
Well, not to bust your chops too much, Joe, but I've seen Aletheian live several times, and I can tell you that they didn't need the bass player, man. I was never sitting there like thinking, you know what would sound a lot better if there was some douchebag on the stage with the bass. You know, that never went through my head.
So all bass players are douchebags now?
No, I just said that there wasn't some douchebag. So I haven't said anything wrong yet, necessarily.
Yet being the key word.
Just give me a few more beers.
And this is the argument that we've always had. It's not about the notes. It's about the frequency range. It's about the part of the sound, the audible sound frequency that I can hear that is not being occupied. Aletheian is a guitar player's band. And if that's what they are, that's fine. But okay. I've always thought it was lacking that. And I would be curious to hear what this band would sound like today with the changes in recording technology. Because A to B comparison, this versus what's being recorded now, yes, home recording has gotten better. There's also been a lot of digital samples and the overuse of not real drummers. This is a amazing example, even though it's lacking in that area for me, of what home recording has always been capable of being. So why, with this setting a very early good example, did a lot of others take the fake drum route, take the lazy bass player route?
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but like I don't go to a live show with a pair of headphones on. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not smart enough to get what you're saying, but like, when I'm at a live show, I'm not sitting there thinking like, man, the frequency in which it seems to be missing that the bass player is supposed to occupy. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't, that didn't translate with me, you know. I was so distracted by how all of the band members wore matching clothes and did windmill hair while they were playing these ridiculous guitar parts. And they just had this showmanship about them that was like, check us out, we're a big deal. We're not up our own ass, but we're a big deal. We're not the metalcore bands that are playing every other stage right now. We are something different, something that Cornerstone really was lacking during that, you know, between 2002 and 2005. You know, like, it was all metalcore then, and you know, to see a band like Aletheian play was really an experience. And actually, the first time I saw them was I was just sitting there at Cornerstone going through some CDs. I just bought some CDs at the merch tent, and like 10 or 15 CDs, I'm looking through the lyric books, and suddenly I hear the song "Break in the Clouds" start playing. Like, not like it had to have been less than 50 feet away from me. You know, like I knew this song, and I was like, holy shit, that's Crutch, you know. And so I got up and started running. Left the CDs there, like, out. Like, near my tent, just laying out on the ground that I just bought from the merch booth, and just ran to find the band, and ended up spending the rest of my money on their stuff. It was a really good experience, man. And I think before I was really into them, and I was blown away by Hope Prevails, you know, the version of it that I had. But whenever I actually saw the band live and it was real, like that's whenever I became like just like a diehard, you know.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about Hope Prevails then.
Real quick. I think back on what Joe was saying, I'm gonna kind of get where he's at. It's what's at the front is very forward and very bright on the first album, and it's very, very apparent, and it's almost harsh. I don't know if maybe that's what Joe was trying to get at.
We'll get back into it. I promise.
But for you, Dan, I mean, for you was the atmosphere. I mean, you went to the show, and you got an exposure, you know, to the emotion of it. I didn't get that exposure with this band. I don't know if Joe's ever seen them live.
Only on DVD.
Okay, well, that doesn't count because you're not actually there. You're not feeling the adrenaline of, you know, hundreds of or thousands of other people.
That's right.
Going crazy with you.
I've got it, Geoff, if you want to watch it sometime.
Yeah, I will. But I'm just saying that when you're there in the moment, it changes how you think of a band.
And you're 100% correct. I hate rap, but I will go to a live show. I don't care if they're rapping. I'm there. I'm in it. The live experience is the most important part of music, is to actually go see the band. But when I'm listening to these albums, it's missing something. And again, I'm trying not to criticize the recordings themselves. And actually, this is my first point about Hope Prevails. I'm skeptical of the CD quality versus the streaming quality because I don't have the disc. My only source for this band was Google Music. And my first question to Geoff, who has been listening to Hope Prevails for years, and Dan, who is a super fan of Crutch, is the streaming music the same as what you have from over 20 years ago, or nearly 20 years ago?
Well, it's not the same, but it's not because of what you're describing. There's two versions of this. As far as I know of Hope Prevails.
There is. I think it's only two.
There's the one that I got from my friend, the MP3s, years and years ago. And whenever I saw the band at Cornerstone, I did pick up a copy of it. But the copy of it that I got at Cornerstone was, it said, you know, Aletheian, because they were Aletheian then. It said Aletheian, formerly known as Crutch, and it was released under Hope Prevails Productions, which I think was the band's own kind of label.
Because they self-produced everything, right?
Yeah, at that time, yes. And but I remember listening to it and noticing that there were like some subtle differences between the two. Just little stuff like vocals sounded a little different, like the pronunciation sounded a little different, and it seemed like the production on the vocals. And I like Joel as a vocalist. Like I like the way his voice sounds. But what I don't like necessarily is how the vocals are mixed, because it kind of like it's a little airy, like almost a little too low in the mix. And I think for good death metal vocals, you want them to kind of have a punch. And I don't feel like they punched as much as they could have on Hope Prevails. And back in the day, I didn't care because I wasn't thinking about like vocal mixing and stuff like that. I just enjoyed the freaking record, and that's how I feel about it now. But if I have to be critical, because that's what we do, I would say that the vocals don't really punch like they almost punched more in the original versions that I had than they did on the CD version, which is funny because my original MP3s were probably significantly lower quality. I mean, I think this was like the very beginning of high speed, so I mean, it took me some time to even get those files. So they had to have been smaller in file size. And so when I heard it on the CD, I just thought, well, maybe the CD just sounds better. But the more I listened to it, the more I was like, no, there's definitely different vocal takes being used, or something has been changed from the original release. And I realize you guys probably don't know that, but it's just something I noticed.
I wonder if that's true for anything else, because these are my favorite drum sounds, is this album right here. The drums are up front. They are full. You can tell somebody is actually playing. I get the same feeling listening to these as I do the self-titled Between the Buried and Me. Yes, the later albums sounded better, but this one sounds like microphones in front of a kit. Thank you.
Yeah, this one's really good. I mean, this is probably my favorite album by them, just because the first time's always your favorite.
Right.
I think some of the stuff that was on Dying Vine is better, but like this record, just because I know all the songs, I know the words, I can sing along. Like it really is. I mean, for a debut record from a band that nobody'd heard of at that point, it just reeks of quality, technicality, heaviness. I mean, it was the whole deal, all the way back then, and actually got me into a lot of the technical death metal that I like now. It's still techie death metal is still my go-to style of music, and that's largely because of this.
Wow.
What did you think, Geoff? You gonna shit all over it now?
No, I had fun with it. The only thing for me is like I said, I wish that I could get a little more oomph out of the clean vocals, and
I don't think there were any clean vocals on Hope Prevails.
A little bit in the back.
Yeah, there's a little bit in the background.
Is there?
Yeah.
Not even aware of that.
A little bit of unison.
Yeah,
okay.
But yeah, that's probably part of it.
Get my ears checked.
Or maybe my brain checked. That's possible too. I think that's the more likely check.
Are you sure you didn't just insert them mentally in there? Because like,
it probably was with me singing along.
I was gonna say, because I don't remember there being any clean singing on that album.
I can't do harsh vocals to save my life unless I'm yelling at my kids.
Right.
That's the only time I can do it. So yeah, it's yeah, exactly. And then they're like, wow, they're gonna be in front of Metal Band. I'm like, God, no, that's Dan's job. I was like, I'll do the clean vocals, floating around on stage, but that's about it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Hope Prevails?
I dug it. I mean, for me, it was fun. I like the whole technical aspect of things. I always have like if you get real techie on music, and I'm in the right mood, I like listening to it over and over again, because you can generally find something that you missed the first go around. And I really like that aspect of technical music, because there's generally a lot of things going on. There's a lot of moving parts. And I think that's also what really tuned me into what Joe was talking about. I know it goes back to the poo-poo thing, but it does. I mean, it made me. I was noticing the deficiencies, and maybe that's by design. I mean, it could be something that they were looking for specifically. but because it's different, and I think everybody's just used to looking for certain things in music because there's a quote unquote formula, and this was a homebrew. I mean, they just did their own thing, and I don't think they really cared what anybody else thought. So, and
no progressive death metal fan in the late 90s, early 2000s would complain, because this was back when people were all about how bad it sounded. And I'm not saying this is bad, but you remember, Dan, those black metal bands, it sounds like a cassette tape turned up to 10. Like, there's no bass, there's no highs, it's all you know what I'm that whole thing was a thing then too, so nobody would have complained about this.
I think this was more like they just did the best they could.
And they did far beyond what anybody else was doing at the time.
Right. I mean, this sounded great. And, for the market that they were in, I mean, this was... I'm very surprised that the band didn't have more buzz about them than they did. Like, I mean, they got a certain amount of notoriety, but it seemed like that was later on. Like, it was almost like... Because I remember, man, like, doing the Christian death metal thing, years and years ago, like around that time, like 2005, 2004, like all that, like there weren't a lot of bands out that sounded this good. Like not in that realm. Like you had really good stuff from overseas. Like you had like Extol, and you had really good Christian thrash bands before that, like Believer and stuff like that. But like this was like a whole different breed. This wasn't Christian music that was influenced by Christian music. And I think that was the biggest thing about it, was that it had an air of legitimacy about it. And it sounded really good for what it was. It was hard hitting. And I am really surprised that it wasn't more of a smash success than it was.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm surprised they were so polished. I mean, just right out of the gate. I mean, even though if we might have some, complaints about mixing and levels, I mean...
The music's great.
The music is fan-freaking-tastic. I mean, it's awesome.
Technical.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that we look for.
Polyrhythmic.
So...
Extreme.
I don't know, maybe it's the fact that they did want to do it all themselves. That, not until, I guess they were part of an imprint of Metal Blade later on.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's no Facebook back then, not in 2001, 2002.
Right.
There's MySpace, I think. I think MySpace was around then.
It was starting, if it hadn't already.
Yeah, and like, so I mean, it's not that there weren't ways to promote, but like, not like it is now. Like, this was still like, okay, we're going to make this record and we're going to press it to CDs, and like, it was all just so much time and effort and work. And I think that's why it's so surprising, because, there are so many bands, like Joe mentioned, that just didn't give a shit about how it sounded. And this was just, it was like a break in the clouds, man. Like, not to be cheesy, but like, it was really, it was like...
Best song on the album.
Oh, yeah, I like that one a lot. I mean, it's an amazing opener. I like that song a lot, but I'm a really big fan of the song Awe and Disbelief. Like, that song, just, I don't know, yeah,
it does it for you. It scratches that itch.
It really does, man. Like, the intro, like, where it's just kind of, it's basically just noodling, but like, I don't know, I just like the way it builds, and then I don't know, like,
we're gonna talk about the noodling here on the next one.
I'm not gonna give a second by second review, but yeah, like, that was really good. Obscured Reflection was really good. That one just has a really, really nice melodic intro. And one thing that I will give it for being a death metal record is that it really does sound hopeful. Like, it sounds positive, It's like everything could just be like, really negative or evil sounding or trying to sound dark. And like, that's not really it. Like, when you have an album called Hope Prevails and it sounds like this, I think thematically it sounds like what it's called.
It's extreme music under control.
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry, I was agreeing, guys. I agreed with the thing.
There are rare instances in life where I am able to leave Dan speechless. I believe this is technically number 4, if I'm correct, right, Mr. T?
Yeah, well, let's get a little bit less positive as we move into the next album.
All right, so who wants to tell Joe about what happened on Apollotrosis?
Apollotrosis? Oh, wow, you just said it, dude. Hats off to Joe.
I'm knocking him out of the park tonight.
He stole my thunder. I've been practicing that fucking word all day long.
Yeah. For some reason, I always want to throw another P in there, like Apollotrosis or something like it. I'm trying to make some sort of, I don't know. It's like the band's called Aletheian, the album's called Apollotrosis. Like, I can't, I just can't, man. It's Apollotrosis by Crutch, damn it.
You gotta love I'm assuming you gotta love your Latin for this stuff. I mean, I'm sure, because I know Travis kind of hit on that earlier. There's got to be some sort of...
Wasn't Alex a Greek philosophy major?
Yes, something crazy like that.
So, I mean, this kind of checks out.
Yeah. So it's ancient Greek, not Latin. Okay.
You guys are going to have a field day as I try to pronounce some of the song names on this album.
Oh, no. You just needed to go like H Movement 1.
Right. At least there's no B movement, right? That'd be weird. But, so this record is really weird to me.
I was a bit bored listening to this one.
Yeah, I did too. And it's not because there's bad material on it. This is still very much the same Crutch or Aletheian or whatever you want to call it as we had on Hopes Prevail, but with delusions of grandeur, I think. I think there was some stuff that was just taken too far. And I know the reason why. And we'll get into that a little bit. Travis has told me, why this album is the way that it is. So what we have here is we have how many tracks do we have here? Let's see, 8? There are 8 songs?
9 tracks, depending on if you trust streaming or an actual physical disc. I don't know, honestly.
Okay, well, let me get the disc off of my shelf here and see real quick, because I'm having a little trouble remembering how many tracks there are here. Stand by, I've got a huge music shelf.
I was about to say, I don't think it's critical information at this point.
Oh, no. I gotta do it now, damn it, I'm committed. Applesauce atrocious.
Applesauce at churches? Is that what you said?
Applesauce atrocious.
Oh.
That's what Travis called it on the Death episode. He's like, oh yeah, applesauce atrocious. Okay, so 9 songs off the disc here. Okay.
Well, so streaming's actually accurate for a change.
Yeah. Yeah, so, moving forward, let's be accurate.
I know I'm probably going to be in the minority, but it's a concept album. I'm going to like it.
Is it a concept album? Really? You think it was, designed to be a concept album?
I don't know. As soon as I opened it up and I saw the track listings, the first thought that went in my head was concept album.
And Geoff, by that definition, Liberate is good based solely on the track listing. Even though the band had nothing to do with it. Anyway, coming back to Apollotrosis.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey, I was drunk on that album, that episode. Give me a break.
This record has 5 really good songs on it.
And each one's a half hour long. It's great.
Not really.
No, I know.
They're relatively short songs. It's not that long of a record either. What is it, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that? I'm not going to put the disc in the player and check, but...
All 3 of the Aletheian records go about 30 to 40.
Yeah.
I can tell you here in a sec. It is 40 minutes.
So we've got song titles like Hamartia Movement I and Movement II. Now this is going to be hilarious. Exalephein Movement I, Movement II. I'm not even going to touch track 5. And then we have Xenos Movement 1 and Xenos Movement 2, Postlude, and Benediction. Now, there's a lot of what's the word? For the most part, like a song like Hamartia Movement 2, that song's awesome. It's very similar to the to the progressive, melodic technical death metal. God, that's a lot of syllables. That we had on Hope Prevail, but it actually sounds a little bit more epic to me, like kicked up a notch, like kind of almost off into space, just really big sweeping epic movements. And so the songs that really hit for me are those types of songs, and they're typically the second of two movements. The first movement, like Hamartia Movement 1, is like just noise and people talking the whole time. And again, I'm sure they're saying like really profound shit that has to do with what the album's about. And like I said, I love the band. I'm a fanboy. I even like the way this sounds. But it does kind of come across as, yeah, we just threw this on here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Wank Fest begins.
Yeah, a little bit. I think they were showing off what they had. I mean, they grew between albums. I'm not going to say that anybody on this record doesn't sound on point. You know, like Travis sounds on point. His drumming might actually be more challenging than it was on Hope Prevails. And again, any of these statements that I make, I'm sure I will be corrected on. But it's one of those things where the songs that really hit for me is Hamartia Movement 2 and Exalephein Movement 2. Those songs kick ass. And they promise something, like they promise a sound that I don't really get throughout the rest of the record. Like, I've got those two songs and they're everything that I want them to be. But everything else, like, it seems to me like there's maybe only like 4 or 5 like actual songs here, and everything else is just kind of like filler. It's like there's just a lot of shit in there, like a lot of filler. And like, it's not shit, like it sounds good, but like I want to hear more like techie proggy death metal, and I don't get that through a good majority of the record. Whereas on Hope Prevails, that's all it was.
So
does that make sense? Like,
yeah, it sounds like we should have John Drake on, and he should be talking about Dream Theater, because this is exactly the argument we had with him against all the Dream Theater stuff. But for whatever reason, I actually like this one, though.
Yeah. It's very atmospheric.
Oh, there's that word.
I think it's a progressive EP.
Hashtag Jeff's Atmosphere. Yeah.
New show coming summer 2018.
Right.
I feel like it's an EP with intros.
It is.
And I think that's why I'm bored. There's not enough substance for me.
And we're being a little facetious here because, like, Travis has told us, like what happened with this album, and essentially, this is the condensed version of it that I know that he's told us, that he told us on our Death episode, that record was basically an EP, which is what it sounds like, because the songs that I keep saying are really great, you know, makes sense if there was only like 3 or 4 of them, you know, or 5 or whatever, for an EP. But the band was being looked at by Century Media at the time, which, I mean, Century Media in the early 2000s, no joke. I mean, it's still no joke, you know. I mean, I'd be ribbed out if Century Media was interested in something I was doing, you know. So basically, they needed a full length, or the label wouldn't even, really consider them as a band. So basically, they just kind of added to what they had, and we ended up with this album. You know, it is a full length. I still listen to it from beginning to end, and like I keep saying that, like, oh, there's all this shit in there and blah 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 blah. And from a critical standpoint, like, the story that Travis told me about the record, like, definitely checks out. You know what I mean? Like, that definitely, when you're listening to it, knowing that going in, you can definitely hear it. However, whenever I first heard it back in the day, I didn't really have that issue with it. I thought it just didn't have as many cool songs on it as the other album did. Sorry to chug some water there.
I was gonna say, did we lose you?
No,
good. I just, just took my breath away, man. You know, but yeah, this record has a few additions. I think that the songs are more melodic than they were on Hope Prevails. I mean, Hope Prevails is an extremely melodic record, but Apollotrosis by Aletheian is it has more progressive elements to it. Like I said before, the songs sound bigger. The recording, to me, sounds better than what we had on Hope Prevails. And there actually is clean singing that I heard on this one, and it's really fucking good. Like, surprisingly so, to the point where I'm like, wait a minute, Like, did they get a new member? No, that's Alex.
Welcome to Alex is in control because he layers it on.
It sounds good too, and it's not too much. You know, there are some bands that do the sing scream thing, but that's not what this is. This isn't like heavy, 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 and then here's this melodic chorus. You know what I mean? This is not. This is a lot more ADD than that.
This is extreme metal orchestration. This is we're going to add more layers to what we're already doing.
Right. So I think that was a really good addition to the band, and I like it, but
I don't like that the drums took a back seat on this one.
The drums do sound a little bit more in the background.
Hope Prevails is a far more satisfying record just from listening to the musicians play.
I love the way it sounds, but yeah, like I wish, more Travis all the time, that's what we want here on Discography Discussion. So, he really sounded good here. Like I said, it's almost like I feel like the songs might have been a little bit more challenging, a little bit harder to pull off, but I mean, he pulls them off. I mean, goddamn. As much as he wants to say that, he's a pretty good drummer, he's more than a pretty good drummer, man. He's definitely the real deal. And I feel like could stand up to a lot of more popular techie metal drummers.
And now it's time to talk about Dying Vine,
which is their best album in my opinion.
Ooh,
Dan, I'm sorry, but as the fall breaks,
well,
it opened the show and it's opening up the discussion on this album. Tell me about Dying Vine.
So Dying Vine was released in 2005. And this was their new release whenever I had actually first seen them. They already had the first two albums out, I think, by the time I saw them. Or maybe, no, I feel like Dying Vine came a couple years later. It's so hard for me to remember stuff that happened 12, 13 years ago. So Dying Vine was, so they had a new drummer on this record, and his name was Joe Walmer. I want to make sure I pronounce that right. Joe Walmer, and he, kick-ass drummer. You always worry whenever a band like this loses a member or changes a member, because, this guy Joe is just completely on point, man.
He fits.
Yeah, he sounds really good with the band sound. Really good transition there, and this album is like a Polytrosis, I think, but it really kind of sounds a little bit more like Hope Prevails too, and that could just be because there's more actual songs on it. I mean, it's 9 tracks, but the production quality has stepped up quite a few notches here.
It definitely sounds like they took more time on this one, and that might be what's really wrong with the Polytrosis. It doesn't sound like they had enough time to make it as great as it could have been.
Possible. This seems like a really took their time on it, really thought out all the songs, because the songs really do stand out apart from one another.
I remember the DVD of them making this record, just watching them record these guitar parts in what looks like an apartment.
Yeah.
And just do it again. That wasn't tight enough, do it again.
I love the notes that they had out for the song, for like the song titles. As the fall breaks, they had a note with like the music on it, a piece of paper with the music on it, and at the top it just says "As the ass aches," which I thought was really funny.
Those recording sessions were brutal.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great album, but I don't know how fun it was to record. And this is what we got.
So,
yeah.
What does that say? Are people not taking enough time? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know, but this sounds great. I mean, Paragon kicks off the record. And it's like a Polytrosis again, but it sounds better. And it's like it's got everything, that they'd established on that record really just in the first 10 seconds. You got the harsh vocals, the clean singing. Definitely like Joel's death metal vocals a lot more on this record. They're a lot more out in front, and they don't have that weird like mixing, like weird effect on them. And it just sounds really good. It actually sounds pretty punchy in some of the more intense songs.
Yeah, I think you like it because they essentially cut the fluff.
Dude. Because it's all killer, no filler.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is actually a shorter album. This is only 32 minutes long, I think.
Yeah.
So
taking the American standards approach: get in, get out, leave them speechless.
Right. The Paragon is an amazing song.
Yes,
Out from the Shadows is probably my favorite on the record. That song really builds. I mean, just all the elements are in place. Everything just flows together really nicely. Nothing sounds forced. They don't take a break, stop, play something crazy, and then start the song again, which is something that kind of tended to happen on previous albums. And this was just really great out of the gate, man. As the Fall Breaks deserves special mention. That was they were playing that song for years before they recorded this album. Because I remember that flyer. See, they would hand out flyers at Cornerstone, and it would have like their whole set list on it, and then it would have all the lyrics to the songs. So you'd give like Geoff something to wipe his nose with, And that was really cool.
Dude, that was really fucking good. Cheers to that.
Oh man, there's no coming back from that. But no, that's a smart idea. I mean, that would get like, assholes like me to actually pay attention.
Right. Well, and it's not like I don't think I saw anybody standing there at the show reading the lyrics of the songs as they want. But at that time, you go home, you go on MySpace. It's got all the band's contact information there. It's got their website. It's got their MySpace page. It's got Pure Volume, whatever it was at the time. And you could listen to those songs, and you'd have the lyrics right there for you, to listen to or to read along with or wipe your nose with. And, I thought that was really clever. And like I said, I mean, it's not that they weren't more popular due to a lack of marketing. I think it just had something to do with just not playing like the most popular style of music at that time, or just playing music that was a little hard for the average person to just get into. Which is kind of weird because like when I came into them on Hope Prevails, I kind of like didn't know a whole lot about death metal, like. And maybe that was good. Maybe if I was like a diehard Suffocation fan or something, I'd be like, "It's slow and noodly. I don't like it." Sounds like something I would say. But no, it really captured me. And I think these songs, like if these were the first Aletheian songs you were showing to somebody, I think it would have had the same impact on me if this had been my first record by them. Versus Hope Prevails. They're both great records, but this one I think edges it out a little bit more, even though Hope Prevails still kind of remains my favorite because it was the first one for me,
I wonder if there were more Aletheian recordings, where would they stand next to a band like Between the Buried and Me, who took this idea of technical death metal and just went way outside the line?
Yeah, I think they would have kept expanding, to be honest. I mean, granted, Dying Vine was really a return to form for the band, I think. But I do hear those experimental elements there. It's not like they shied away from anything that they established on Apollotrosis. It's all there too, know.
It's a blending of the previous two releases, in my opinion. I think that's why I like it. I like the whole experimental aspect of the previous release, but this has got a little more meat and potatoes, and I think overall it's by far their best release. I don't think it's that close, but I also happen to be coming into this without having the emotional connection that Dan has. Whenever it's always your first love kind of thing. So that's why Hope Prevails is like going to be always there for you.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, man, I compare a lot of albums I hear to Hope Prevails. Like it's kind of one of those records for me that just kind of like this is a definition of what like technical metal is, and so I tend to almost kind of not even consider stuff that doesn't necessarily fall into that. That doesn't fall into that same vein. I like to think I've gotten better about that over the years, but I mean, it's still kind of my go-to. When I listen to a record, I was like, well, how does it compare to Hope Prevails? Or how does it compare to Dying Vine, Yeah,
you got to have a barometer of some sort. I mean, I like whenever I do like, technical stuff, I always go to like the Contortionist. So I always compare it, especially like off of Exoplanet and stuff like that. I really, that's kind of like the litmus test for me. Everybody's got some band that they're going to want to constantly compare things too. I mean, that's just par for the course. That's human nature. So it makes sense that, that you want to go back to Hope Prevails. I mean, it scratches that itch for you. It was the right band at the right time for you. I mean,
For sure.
And that's, once you get that, you never let it go. Like for me, back in the 90s, it was God Lives Underwater. Like I compared everything to God Lives Underwater. They they could shit rainbows out their ass, as far as I was concerned. I thought they were the best thing that ever happened to music for like a good 10 years.
Right.
So, I mean, everybody's got that.
Well, I remember when we were recording our album with Travis, Joe actually played his drum set for the recording, and I remember thinking like being a total fanboy, like, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, man, I couldn't believe I was at Travis Turner's house. You know what I mean? Like I knew of him as the drummer for Crutch, and so like it really blew my mind. Like looking at his CD collection, seeing all those Death CDs and stuff in there, and I remember just like kind of looking at the drum set and being like, is this the same kit that he recorded Hope Prevails with? Like it was my big fanboy moment.
You forgot the DVD collection, man. Voltron, Defender of the Universe.
Did he have all the Voltron DVDs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that. I was too busy looking at the CDs. But yeah, I've actually got that DVD collection now too. I picked it up at V-Stock for my birthday. But yeah, I remember thinking like, and I used to tell people too. I'd be like, yeah, dude, we recorded our CD, with the drummer from Crutch. And people are like, the hell are you talking about? But it was a really big deal to me.
And that's what counts, man.
And it was, and I remember too, I told Travis that the first copy of Hope Prevails that I had was illegally downloaded from the internet. Like somebody sent me the files, and he was like, "You ripped off my band!" Like,
but I went out and bought it because
I bought it later on. It was so funny. Yeah, and at first I was kind of like, "Is he serious?" Like, I didn't know how to react, so I just kind of like downplayed it for the rest of the time I was there. And but yeah, like so just I've got a lot of really good memories of Crutch and Aletheian, and especially like just that time period in my life, and that's what I associate a lot of it with. So I've got a very biased opinion towards the band, but I think that's okay. I mean, I'm willing to be objective, that I didn't think that necessarily everything was perfect, but I think, like Joe said, for a band that was doing it all themselves, this is just polished as hell. I mean, they really had an achievement there, and it's kind of sad that they're not really around anymore.
Look up Alex on YouTube if you get a chance, if you want to see the mad scientist in action.
Well, Alex also, he went on and played guitar in Becoming the Archetype after Aletheian, like he
didn't he have some,
and that was really cool. He
too?
did their Physics of Fire album with them, and he sings on that too. So
yeah.
You get everything you'd expect out of him, and that was a cool record. I really liked that. And then him and Travis got together a few years later with Jason Wisdom, and they recorded a project called Solomers. Again, I don't understand why it can't just be called something easy, but whatever. But yeah, they recorded a project called Solomers. The album was called Depravity's Demise. So Travis played drums on that, and Alex played guitar. And as far as I know, did pretty much everything, with him. And then Jason Wisdom did the screaming vocals on that, and that was a really cool record. Although it wasn't like techie like Aletheian. It was a little bit more straightforward, but like still really good. Like definitely good song, or good, really good car music.
All right, so Geoff, final
Yes.
thoughts on Aletheian.
I wasn't done, man. Travis did a bunch of other stuff too.
Oh shit, Dan's still going.
Yep.
Pretend like nothing
Yeah.
happened.
So Travis, I only had one more band to mention, but Travis also played drums in a band called Unteachers, and they are actually still around. Travis doesn't play for them anymore, but Unteachers is an amazing band, and
To add them to the list.
Definitely check them out. Really cool stuff. And then obviously, as we all know, Travis went on to start the As the Story Grows podcast, which is a podcast that I'm a huge fan of. And, you know, the rest is history, man. Like, it definitely, I was really excited that we got to talk about them this week, because I just, it just always has so much to say. I mean, I could talk about this band forever, but I know you guys wouldn't want that. So, Joe, I will finish. That's all I got for today.
All right, Geoff, final thoughts on Aletheian.
I had fun with it. Really did. I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish, and that's not always the case. I generally am one that's a little bit on the critical side. I may not be quite the raging lunatic that Dan can be when he dislikes something, but I normally am the one that just bitches and complains the most. And I don't really have any complaints, other than, you know, there's some mixing and level issues on the first album, Hope Prevails. That's about the only thing that I really... If that's the only thing I can bitch about on your album, you're doing pretty fucking good. So, these are 3 solid albums. It's like Dan said, it's a shame that they didn't get to get a little more notoriety, because I think that they deserve it. I think they're really, really good.
Dan, what about you?
Kind of like what Geoff said. It sucks that they're not still around. Would really love to see where they would have gone. You know, I think they had so much potential. They had a really cool thing going on, and but you know, I kind of understand it as well, that, you know, maybe you toil for years, and you don't see enough, you know, profit from it, or see enough, not necessarily profit like about money, but just you don't necessarily get a good payoff for that hard work. And you know, and life happens. I think that's a pretty critical factor in why a lot of bands disappear, is because life catches up with them, you know, and they just have other priorities and other things. So I think it's really cool, though, that the other members of the band have done other things, and you know, hopefully we'll hear more of that in the future. That's all I got.
I think the day-to-day, run-of-the-mill progressive death metal fan needs to listen to Aletheian and find out how many of their favorite bands were influenced by Aletheian, or that Aletheian was around at the same time. I don't know of any one particular band that came right out and said, oh yeah, everything we do today we did because of Aletheian. But I think just like you can start with the basics in any field that you study, I think home recording engineers and even guitarists that just want to make their own music should sit down and really listen to Aletheian and just process the idea that this was done by one guy, the recording, I mean, and it came out this solid, this clean, this melodic, this atmospheric, and had little to no reverb. When I think of bands that don't have reverb, I think of Cake. That's it. Everybody else uses something to kind of enhance the atmosphere of their record. These albums are heavy, melodic, and they are under control. There are very few bands that are heavy, melodic, and under control. Check out Aletheian. Dan, what's your album of the week?
Well, I've been really stuck on this Not Beneath album called Memento Mori, and it's amazing. Can't get enough of it. And we might be talking to those guys soon, so check it out.
Geoff, what about you?
All right. It's what I wanted to listen to tonight as well. I mean, I'm not complaining about this, but I lost out to the masses that would be Dan and Joe. I want to do Uneven Structure episode at some point. La Partition was what I was listening to. I love that band.
So everybody needs to go out and check out Uneven Structure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's plain as day. And there might be a reason why I like that. We have another episode coming up that might have a little influence on Uneven Structure. And by little, I mean a whole hell of a whole lot.
There you go.
And on that note, this has been episode 49 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks. So if you were wondering, Dan, if it's actually possible to talk about 3 Crutch records for an hour, we did it.
We did it.